Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Happy Spirit Week. I wanted to take a moment to welcome our panelists, Aditya Kashyap, Amelia Wolfe, and Alex Patterson. Would each of you like to take a moment and introduce yourselves, please?
Hey, Tanya, great to be here. I'm Aditya Kashyap. I am a senior program manager in Morgan Stanley. I'm a class of 2016 Management and Systems SPS grad. And I currently, in a nutshell, work to build technologies around preventing anti-money laundering and anti-corruption, basically stopping threat actors through risk models and algorithms that I do to screen transactions for different customers, making sure we safeguard our assets and we put our best foot forward as a firm and keeping our clients safe throughout. I did my undergrad as well through Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it's good to be back in school, I would say. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Aditya. It's wonderful to have you here today. Amelia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia Wolfe. I'm a senior intelligence analyst and project manager at Maxar Technologies, which is a geospatial intelligence and satellite imagery company. I'm a graduate of the Center for Global Affairs within SPS from 2013, and I specialized in international law and human rights while I was there. Now I'm an SPS Alumni Ambassador located in DC. And outside of work, I do a couple of things. I'm a Truman National Security Fellow, an engagement director for their DC chapter. And I also sit on the board of a young professionals program called Carnegie New Leaders, which is run by the Carnegie Council for Ethics and International Affairs, based in New York, actually. I helped form their DC chapter, and now I sit on the board. And that's meant to build the next generation of ethical leaders in international affairs. And then I've been in DC for about 5 years now, working in government contracting. In New York, I was in the think tank world, working at the Council on Foreign Relations, and I worked at an NGO that focuses on mass atrocity prevention.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Thank you, Amelia. You've been up to a lot since you graduated. Alex, would you like to go next, please?
Certainly would. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here and join you this morning. My name is Alex Patterson, and I'm the Director of Real Estate and Risk Management at Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz, a prominent Midtown law firm. I am a double Violet alumni. I completed both the undergraduate program in real estate and the master's in real estate program at the Shack Institute of Real Estate. And, I'm happy to be here and looking forward to having a fruitful conversation with all of you.
Thank you, Alex. Before we begin with kind of the discussion that we're here to have today, I just wanted to let our attendees know that if you have any questions along the way, please send them into the Q&A feature and not the chat feature. And I'll be monitoring that as and when we can. We will bring them up and address those. Thank you. And one thing I do want to mention before we begin is something Aditya left out of his introduction was that he's also being honored this Saturday this year actually as a distinguished young alumna. And it's happening this alumni weekend. So please come in and show your support. And it's a huge, huge honor. Congratulations, Aditya, again. And looking forward to getting started. So I'll actually start with you, if you don't mind. And if you could begin a little bit by telling us about your background and why you decided to join the Management and Systems program at SPS.
Sure, absolutely, Tanya. Thanks. I was born and raised in New Delhi, India. Had very humble beginnings, to be very honest. And I was always very fascinated by the intersection of technology and business. I was this curious kid who would like to kind of open things up and see what's under them. I may not be able to close them back, but hey, I was very passionate about technology from the very get-go. And management and systems chose to be the perfect program for me because it was a perfect amalgamation of just that, technology and business. And now when I've graduated over the years, I'm in this space, this cusp of meeting both the worlds. I come to understand that technology is a very capital intensive proposition for any organization. And you have to be very, very careful in where you're spending all the money in. And that being said, you have to have the smarts to navigate through when to venture into a new technology as opposed to building your own versus buying, things of that sort. That mindset has to be very, very clear, and the vision of the company has to be very well articulated. That can only happen with a certain management style, which is very fluent and which is very, very fluid. So these are two areas where management comes into picture in order to manage technology. Because if you don't tame technology, if you don't understand what your needs and wants are in this current market space, you will lose that competitive edge. And I just deal with basically financial crimes in my current role, which is the biggest damage you could have is reputational damage. If you're not managing the assets, client securities very, very well. So my role is even more heightened in that cusp of technology and its management. And I think it was a natural progression for me to play to my strengths and have things which I'm really passionate about. Hence, I chose to be in the management and systems space. And I couldn't have had a better choice of career progression for myself. During my undergrad, also, I was a bit of business and technology. I was management and information systems major and an economics major. So I think the next step was to go for a master's, which kind of fits in and plays to my strengths all throughout. So that's the kind of mindset I grew up with, and I kind of honed in on it over the years to make sure that I was staying current, I was staying relevant, and I was being curious all throughout. I think it's the curiosity that keeps me going, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you, Aditya. I think it's very important to have that curiosity mindset. So it's really nice to hear that you had that throughout, and you knew from a very young age what you wanted to do. I'm sure a lot of attendees here today either feel the same way or are still trying to figure out how to navigate their way through school. And hopefully today's discussion would help them with that. Amelia, my next question is for you, and maybe it's on the similar lines of what I asked Aditya. How did you make a decision to come to NYU SPS, and maybe tell us a little bit about some of your fond memories from going to school?
Sure. So there were a couple of reasons that I ended up choosing NYU. I would say one that informed even just where I applied was that I wanted to be in the greatest city in the world. And for international affairs, there's really nowhere better in the United States than what I would consider like it is the most diverse city. So for me, it was either New York or DC, which is a bit more US focused. And so I decided to kind of go with New York, where there's the UN and international NGOs. The second component is that NYU Center for Global Affairs was the only place where I could find a program that I could concentrate in international law and human rights. Pretty much international law was only available at law schools outside of that, and I just wasn't ready for that. And it felt like anywhere else I could have gone, I was either going to be siloed to politics with a bit more of a US government focus, or to international NGOs or national NGOs. And I just wasn't sure that either of those were exactly what I wanted. I wanted to keep my door open. So by going to CGA, it just felt like I'd have the opportunity for either, maybe pursuing law school down the line, or joining the government, or entering the private sector, as it turns out. And then the last component I would say is culturally, and honestly, kind of politically, NYU felt like a good fit for me. It's, a progressive and innovative school, and at the same time, there's a lot of room for students to grow and find themselves without actually being kind of like forced into the mold that you get at some schools. And so those were kind of the three factors that just led me right to NYU, and there was no question about it. And then best memories. So honestly, the opportunities that my program, the Center for Global Affairs, offered outside of the classroom were kind of the things that I think I took away the most. Some of them I knew about going in, and others just kind of, I guess, stumbled my way while I was there. So a big one is they offer field intensives. And so I was able to go to Bosnia, Serbia, and The Hague to study transitional justice. And I just learned so much that I could never learn in a classroom. And I walked away with a lot from that. And then there were kind of like small opportunities that professors got us while I was attending school. So that might have been like working on a project with an NGO for class, or volunteering at the UN. And those are things I didn't know about going into the program, but I benefited from a lot and kind of helped figure out where I wanted to go next. And then the last tidbit I'll say is that I met my husband in the program. So I guess I came away with that too.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Amelia. Alex, as I kind of saved this question for you last because I felt like as a double violet, it probably meant a little different or maybe similar to you in terms of not just going to school here for your bachelor's and your master's, but also having a full-time job along with your education. I guess maybe talk a little bit about how did you manage all of that?
Yeah, correct, Tanya. I guess I loved it so much. I came back and I did it twice, right? For me, it was, I've always, let's just, rewinding a little, I always have been fascinated by real estate. First introduced to it by my uncle, who to this day is still a real estate broker in Brooklyn. And, as a young teen, I would go to his office. I would hear the different real estate terms being thrown back and forth. And that's what got me interested in the industry early on. Specifically to NYU, I was actually looking to do a certification program, right? As we're all aware of, NYU offers these, wonderful certification programs, and I was looking to do a program in real estate. And, as I started comparing the program and looking at the duration, I said, I might as well do a degree in this program, right? And just get the full experience. Why NYU, prestigious university, New York City, center of everything. And, that's why I was looking at them in the first place to do the certification. In terms of working full time, I've worked since I was a teenager. Wasn't born with the proverbial silver spoon. So everything I've, had to work for. And in terms of deciding whether or not to take off from work and to go to school, I mean, that just wasn't an option financially for me. So, I entered the program while maintaining a full-time job, and certain semesters I even did, 3 to 4 classes while working full-time. And I went throughout the summer as well, because I was like on a clear-cut mission just to, wrap up my studies. And, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I made wonderful friends to this day, and just, the faculty and everyone at the university, I mean, they were so supportive.
That's amazing, Alex. I mean, I can only imagine, cannot actually imagine how much effort went into managing school and a full-time job. And that brings me to one of the things that I wanted to ask you is that students at school at large, but specifically at SPS, what we've been hearing a lot is that now that the school is virtual, they have so many different options and opportunities of things that they can attend, that they can go to. Kind of what would your advice be to them, considering you managed a lot through school and having a full-time job? What would your advice be to students today who have so many different options to choose from and sometimes feel overwhelmed that they don't necessarily know how to kind of prioritize?
Yeah, totally. That's a wonderful question, Tanya. I think for those students, I would say just, exercise good time management, as cliche as that may sound, and, focus on the topics and the programs that appeal to you. There's the SPS Alumni Network. If you're not a member of that, you should definitely sign up. And, on that platform, you can reach out to, past alumni of the university. And just, once again, if your focus and your interest is real estate, you can go on that platform and reach out to folks that are in the industry. The same thing if, you're thinking about moving into another industry, right? Maybe you're a development track real estate student and you're interested in finance. I would say reach out to those professors that teach the financial component of those courses, and just be real, intentful about what it is of interest to you. And I would say focus on that, because, there's so much going on in the virtual environment today where, I mean, even for me as a working professional, right? Every day I'm being inundated with emails that are inviting me to 5, 6, several different virtual events. And, I just have to hone in on the ones that are of, particular interest to me. So that would be, my advice.
Thank you, Alex. My next question is coming back to you, Amelia. I know that you're an NYU Alumni Regional Ambassador, And this is kind of on the same note of things being virtual now. Could you maybe elaborate on how students could be part of local communities or continue to grow their network even after graduation? Because now students are remote, they're situated across the globe. What are some of the things that they could be doing, maybe speaking from your own experience?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways. Some of them, I think all of these will work in the virtual world, but they'll also kind of function once we get back. And I don't know if this applies to all programs in SPS, but CGA, for example, has an alumni board that helps inform the program. And that's a great way that I've seen many people get involved after they graduate to kind of stay connected and to take their work experience and kind of bring it back to the program. And I think, maybe with COVID, there's an opportunity or maybe an impetus to kind of, right now you have to be located in New York. Maybe there's an impetus to kind of get folks from outside of the tri-state area to get involved there. Additionally, I didn't even know that NYU had a location in DC when I moved down there. So I learned that pretty quickly, and they host events there. And I know that, NYU has locations all over the world. I think, we all would be surprised when we discover that. So if you're in a big city, Google it, see if they're there. And most of those locations host events as well. I also, when I moved to DC, I was surprised by the number of kind of ad hoc groups that had developed. Some more dated than others, but I think I looked on like a meetup at the time to see what existed. And there were a lot of folks who had come together in the past or currently, not necessarily all from the same concentration or program, but just to kind of meet other people in the area and get get off the ground there. So that's kind of an easy way. Even if they're outdated, it gives you a point of contact with someone to connect with. And then there's kind of two things that I have found the most useful, and I think the virtual world right now kind of will benefit it to a degree, and I'll explain how. So first is like one-on-ones, right? So I, for the most part, learned pretty early on to just start emailing people on LinkedIn and kind of pulled together this template email that I could send to folks in my field who I might want to talk to, and tailor it to them to kind of figure out what I want to talk to them about. But now we even have the SPS Violet network, so we can utilize that. I think that's even better because we'll be able to see their concentrations and what they're really interested in, cities that they may travel to, that kind of thing. So that has been the most valuable for me. I've gotten jobs that way by just talking to people on LinkedIn. And even if that specific person isn't useful, they might know someone else. So that's one of the best ways, I would say. And then when I moved down to DC, I'll talk about this quick. There was no network for the Center for Global Affairs, which is the program I was in. And I kind of felt like in DC, we should have one. It's one of the main cities where alumni end up outside of New York because of the job opportunities there. And so I started cold emailing people on LinkedIn and just saying, can I have your email so I can include you and we'll all get together. I did through that, and then word of mouth kind of to start, and just got people in the same room. And in a virtual environment, it's even easier. You don't necessarily have to be in the same city. You could start a group that's focused on an affinity group or a common interest, whatever you want, and just kind of reach out to folks and get them involved. And over about 2 years now, we've got a list of 60 people that we stay connected with here in DC. And that's just for CGA. That's not even for the broader SPS. So I would say, in the virtual world, one, makes it easier. Two, now's the time to kind of build that list so that when things do go back to normal, you can just get rolling. And if you had asked me a few years ago if this is something I would do, I would have rolled my eyes and thought, said, I'm an introvert. There's absolutely no way. But here we are. So anybody can do it.
That's amazing, Amelia. Thank you for sharing that. I guess would you, I know you spoke a little bit about COVID and how students can take opportunities and leverage opportunities considering they are remote, and it opens up more doors than before. Would you kind of have something different to add to what could they be doing if they're not in the New York tri-state area? Like what if they're situated in a different country, on a different continent? Would you have something else in addition to what you've already spoken of that they could be doing?
Yeah, I guess, there's kind of some benefits, of course, and negatives to virtual events, right? A negative is that we don't have that opportunity afterward to just walk around and mingle and network. I've never been good at that anyway. So, I can take a different approach. In these virtual events, if you see a speaker that interests you, or you see an attendee who maybe comes from a field, or has a job that interests you, and a lot of times, hopefully, in webinars, we do those like quick little introductions. These virtual events give you the opportunity to look them up and see if there's someone you'd actually be interested in talking to. And then you have kind of this in where you can say, hey, I saw that you were in this event. Would you want to have just a quick like one-on-one chat? I could use your advice on XYZ. So I think that's a new opportunity that the virtual realm opens, especially for people who are in cities. Maybe they want to relocate. You'll see people from all across the world in these events. So that's, I think, one thing. And then, like I said, I guess everything else I've really kind of brought up before, but again, now's the time to start. Like I know one person who's located in China, and she decided she would kind of start a small network over there because there wasn't one that existed. So if you're anywhere across the globe and you want to bring some NYU people together, you can really get rolling on that now.
Thank you. I hope that folks that are listening in are essentially taking a lot of inspiration from what you said and get on it no matter where they're situated. Aditya, my next question is kind of for you. As an international student who, pursued his undergraduate education in the US, what was your experience like at NYU SPS? We've heard from Alex and Amelia. Maybe you could shed light on how your experience may or may not have been different from other students.
Sure, Tanya. I think I was very blessed in the sense that I was very curious innately, as I said in my opening remarks as well. So I think being in a new country amongst new people and understanding a new culture is a privilege in of itself, because you kind of are exposed to a whole new realm of findings and exploring your thought process and broadening your horizons. I came from a pretty theoretical kind of a background wherein I was really taught and there was a correct answer to finding a solution to a lot of the problems. I found the education system here to be very hands-on, and you get down and dirty to kind of understand the concepts. There's no right answer. And it's not based on what you learn, it's what you imply on. And you are the major actor in your own particular career growth and development. There is no set path. Everybody, like even our panelists here, Alex and Amelia, they have different paths of exploring their own self and getting to their own forte. I think you drive your own career, and you're an equal counterpart as opposed to your professors and everybody who has that. They can give you the foundation, but out the building block, but the entire building or the architecture has to be your own creativity, your own drive. Pretty much is what I thought of my schooling here, both as an undergrad and at grad school. And I think it pays off if you are not aware, of people who are undecided too. I think it really helps you find yourself in the entire process. But you have to trust the process and take initiative. You have to go out there and participate in class, small things. Maybe if you're interested in an employer, go to coffee chat sessions. NYU SPS in collaboration with Wasserman holds a lot of those, for example. Or I would even ask a professor, like during recess or during class break, what are your thoughts on this particular topic? They're very passionate people. I've never been turned down by a professor if I'm asking a question, even during class or during recess, whatever the case may be. There are certain other avenues. We have the NYU Violet Network, which is here now. I think it's a fantastic launchpad. No matter where you are situated, virtually or in person, you can. It gives you profiles, alumni or current students based on your interests. I think it's a very smart engine, and then you can have all these chat sessions which are going on through different groups and affinity groups that you can join in there and share your interests. So I think it's much easier for somebody who is not really an extrovert or not into networking that much. You already have a platform to start off of and build your way up from there. The other things is it's okay to be wrong at times. If you sense something which is not right, or you're trying something, it's not working out, you can always change your ways or methods. It's a new place for any international student. It's a new culture, it's a new environment, and have the correct intention, and you will attract really good people who are very supportive and very collaborative. You just have to get out of your shell. I mean, it takes a little bit of an adjustment period, as it would in any given society or any new culture that you assimilate with. But NYU, I didn't find that issue at all, because New York is a melting pot in itself of multiple cultures. You'll find people from all walks of life. So basically, take charge yourself, and then sky is the limit. You can achieve whatever you want, provided you have the right intent, and secondly, you are outgoing in the sense that you are acting on that particular intent. So it's great. As I like to always say, that it's great to dream, provided you act on it when your eyes are open. That's something I've really felt, and I to this day kind of act on these things. And since I'm an alumni now, but I still reach out to my professors who were there. And time to time, if I'm in the area, I love to drop by and say hi, or pick up their mind on a particular topic which I'm struggling with. There was one issue about Brexit. What are the thoughts about it? I can speak of one professor, Professor Ergas. He teaches managing a global economy. Absolutely fantastic. Till this date, we kind of have conversations on how we could build, and what are the challenges that are happening out there. So I think these are lifelong relationships. You never stop learning, and always help kind of build on that curiosity is what I would say. Thanks.
Aditya, I definitely agree with a lot of what you said, that we are the drivers of our own careers. I feel that Amelia and Alex would also agree that what they've accomplished so far in their professional and personal lives is because they were always driven, they stayed determined, and they acted upon it. And I can see them nodding. So I know they agree. And thank you for sharing that, Aditya. I feel like this is a good point to ask you. You touched upon it a little bit, but maybe if you could elaborate in more specific details, what were some of the things that you did, in addition to obviously keeping in touch with professors, that helped you transition to school in the US? Because you spoke a little bit about how the experience was different from how the education was back in India for you. So how did the education approach, how did you transition into the new way of learning, as you spoke about?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Actually, I was open to new experiences, hence I was going into a new style of learning. I had watched a lot of YouTube videos of different professors from different universities before I came in. So I knew what I was signing up for, and it would be original. It would be my own, so to speak. And the second point I always got to know was, before coming in, the International Students Office does a fantastic job in trying to pair you up with current students to get their perspectives. They would have webinars before coming in, what to expect, what not to expect. That was a very good eye opener to see, okay, from day one, what are you going to be doing? What's an ideal student's day look like, for example? How can you do better? How can you do well? And also, there are different, you have your conversation with the academic advisor even before you reach the country, for example, like I did. So they are a very good starting point in understanding your courses. How could you mentally prepare? Could you do something? Could you do some groundwork before you come in, or should you just keep an open mind, come to class and start learning, for that matter? So I think you carry a lot of key strengths with you when you come in from a different culture. You get that perspective, which is an eye-opener even for your students who are born and raised here in the US. So you take the whole class dynamic to a whole new level. It's literally a global village, is like I would like to coin that term if I could, but it's actually a global village. From people from all walks of life come with different varied experiences, and then you can assimilate and see what you can take away from that particular course. It's priceless, absolutely. And the second most important part, I would say, is always speak with your professors, which I've already done, and your academic advisors. I think they would advise you on what your goals and aspirations are and what the school has to offer, especially in the initial days when you're still getting acclimatized. I would say don't wait for the last hour or the last quarter to look for a job. Have it in the back of your mind what employers are you're passionate about, what industry you're passionate about if you're undecided, because it's all a journey. I would rather say schooling here is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You are not just confined to scoring good grades in that particular quarter, but you have to kind of take the collective charge of using your learnings to understand who you are and what you're passionate about. Once you have that connection in place, the other things would follow at a natural pace, because the school has these kind of facilities for you to improve on. Wasserman's fantastic for resumes. It's fantastic for interview grooming, for example. It's fantastic for coffee chats. Employers come and give their takes, what they're looking for. Does that culture resonate with you? Things of that sort that you can take away from. Your academic advisor is your partner in this whole journey. Have a very close contact with them and see what your aspirations are. Have they changed? They could, because you're continuously evolving. And if they're changing, there's nothing to be, it's not a bad thing. It's a fantastic thing, because you come from a more insightful kind of a key strength area. And then that will help you kind of, again, understand what you really want. That's the idea behind this, and continuously learn. And I would rather say learning also transcends schooling as well. So I'm continuously learning, unlearning, and relearning is how I like to put it out. So you got to be curious. That's how you stay current, and keep finding yourself. I would rather say I'm still, as a working professional, I keep finding myself on different technologies, different avenues which I'm interested in. How could I make it better, my space? How could the threat analyses be better? How could cybersecurity be better? Because I'm in an industry which is constantly changing, so which comes with its pros and cons. But if you have the right approach and the right mindset to it, sky is the limit, as I always say. Thanks.
Thank you, Aditya. I definitely feel very much inspired to be doing more than I'm already doing. And I hope that our attendees listening in today are feeling that way too. Alex, I guess I wanted to ask you, I know Aditya extensively spoke about some of the resources that he tapped into as an international student while his time here at SPS. Would you like to speak a little bit about what were some of the things that you tapped into at SPS that enriched your experience outside of the classroom?
Yes, I would. I think it's not, and I think this will help a lot of the current students. I think it's not lost in us that, due to COVID, you're facing tremendous challenges, right? But something that I've learned with every crisis, there's a wealth of opportunities that are available to you. So I think, this period, me coming into the university, I was working full time, but some of and NYU, they're really good about this. There's a club for absolutely everything. Anything you can think of, there's a club. So, I wanted to have that NYU experience outside of the classroom, even though my time on campus was limited. So I sought out certain programs and clubs. I joined the economics club. I even joined a creative writing club. And for those out there that know me, I'm probably the last person they would think to sit and write poems. But it was very calming, and I enjoyed the professor that was, the head of the club and the creative writing group. And, it was a tremendous experience. The thing for me also about NYU are the professors and just the professionals that work within the various departments. There's a total open door policy. I mean, Aditya touched on this. It's NYU is a family at the end of the day. And for those of you that are out there, I treat it the same way, right? If there's anything that I could ever do to help anyone in the NYU community, I'm always willing and able. And that's not just lip service. Like if you reach out to me on the SPS Violet Network, I will respond to you. So, and I started this by saying, we realize the challenges that you're currently going through given COVID, and we're all rooting for you. So feel free, and I'll put everyone else on the panel on the spot. Feel free to reach out to any of us, Aditya, Amelia, Tanya. I promise you, we'll all respond. But going back to the question, for me, there were just so many opportunities outside of the classroom, whether it was working on deals with professors or just, going to the various clubs or programs, or even off-campus entertainment opportunities, right? Like live bands at neighboring restaurants. And it was just an amazing experience for me. And like I said, I liked it so much, I did it twice.
That's wonderful, Alex. I wanted to move this back to Amelia a little bit. And I know she spoke about how she's been very active about outside of school now, currently, even with her job. Amelia, maybe you want to talk about, I know Aditya and Alex covered a lot of the things that they did at school, but were there specific activities or clubs that you joined or that you were active in while at school? I know you mentioned that there was a club that you started out because it didn't exist, but were there other things that you took up while you were at SPS that aid you now in your professional career?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say the biggest thing is kind of the group I started, which I can talk about quick. Essentially, when I arrived at CGA, I realized that all the other concentrations had student groups represented in the student body government or among the administration, but mine, which was international law and human rights, did not. So a couple of us realized that, just kind of threw together a group. I say threw together, but it was a bit of work. And by the time, I left, we were able to kind of hand off a group that was established. It had, its mandate and things like that. It had a sponsor. We had hosted events, and it just gave a voice to the one concentration that I guess didn't previously have one. And that, for me, it gave me a taste of what it's like to, manage a small group or to facilitate discussions, to moderate an event, which I hadn't done before, or to do things like request funding from the administration, which can be kind of an awkward thing to do. And it doesn't have to be concentration specific. Like I think Alex had mentioned also things like affinity groups. Like if there's some really big ones across NYU, but if you find, for international affairs, for example, if you wanted to talk about like LGBT issues within international affairs, you could start a group. There's just always opportunities, and even if it's a handful of people, just bringing people into the same room or virtual room to talk about that can be really valuable. And then the other things I really did, that was kind of the big one while I was in school, but some other things that I think helped me once I left were, one, I did 2 different types of internships outside of school, and I think that was advantageous because it helped me learn what I did and didn't like. And kind of learn about different fields. So one was an NGO, another was a think tank, and it just gave me a perspective on where I wanted to go after school. And the last is networking. I mean, I've mentioned, you all know at this point that I am an introvert, but I pretty much took up any opportunity over those 2 years to meet new people or to present in front of people. I was way out of my comfort zone, but I knew I had like these 2 years to hone those skills. And to essentially meet the people who would probably help determine my first job out of grad school. So I chose to make it a persistent effort. And I think that's pretty important because networking when you need a job is the absolute worst time to do it. You have to kind of do it persistently over time so that you establish those relationships that you can then use. And so that really helped me a lot and has been absolutely vital to my career.
Thank you, Amelia. I'm just going to quickly plug in and mention that if any of the attendees have any questions, please send them into the Q&A and we will start taking them as they come in. And having said that, I want to go back to you, Alex, and maybe if you could share some of your experiences and learnings that you had at school as a Dow student, and then specifically part of the SHAC program. Like, what were some of the experiences that might have been different that regular students coming to regular programs directly might not have experienced, or the ones that are transitioning into school that way could kind of make the most?
Yeah, very good question. I think for me, it goes back to the professors once more. in both programs. I mean, I like the fact that most of the professors in the program were actively involved in the industries that I was interested in, right? Aditya touched on this earlier. If there were, in real estate mergers or real estate development deals happening, I could go to a professor and get their insight. Or if, there was a cross-border sort of, merger or something, and that was an area that I may not have, the greatest of understanding, I could go and get their feedback. So I think that's the wonderful thing about NYU and about like my program specifically. And I know it's not only relegated to my program. I think it's just the professors bring this wealth of knowledge that's unparalleled, when you hold it up to all the other programs. And even the ability to bring guest speakers into the classroom, right? And guest speakers that are at the top of their game in their respective fields. That was just one thing I think, once again, that was unparalleled when I was looking at, other programs. The other thing was, and Amelia touched on this earlier, was the ability to do the international trips. And, like I said, my time was limited, but I did attend a global real estate conference in France. And that was like one of the most amazing experiences ever. I sat at a table with mayors from around the world, right? And they were talking about, how, the impact of real estate and just all these various topics that you can see how what worked in one particular area wasn't working for another one. And you can just sit there and watch their thought process in discussing this and working it out, right? So I think just that exposure to the world, if you will, right? I think that's what NYU offers, and just a diverse student body. I think that helped me, right? There were things that I was familiar with, as it pertained to New York City, but there were students from India, from China, from the Caribbean, from Europe, where, things were different in their respective countries. And, that exchanging of information and knowledge, I think that's one thing that, that will forever stay with me. And just coming out of both programs, I've formed amazing relationships that last to this day, right? Some of us take vacations together, and when we're in each other's cities, we catch up for dinner and lunch. So I think, and I said this earlier, treat the program as an extended family. And I really mean it. Like, once you're within the NYU community, and it's not only relegated to SPS, I found. I've gone to other mixers, right? I work at a law firm. I've gone to NYU law events, and, it's the same thing, right? It's one big family. So I would say, enjoy your time in the program. And as, you're an introvert like Amelia, don't be afraid to reach out to people, and you can start with me, right? If you don't like speaking with a lot of people, right? I'll be your gateway to a smidgen of extrovertness, if you will.
Thank you, Alex. I wanted to ask you, because considering you spoke about both of your experiences and what that brought to you, and you spoke a little bit about people who are introverted and may not be very comfortable going out there and putting themselves out there. If you had to give advice to yourself when you were back at SPS, now as an alumni, what would you tell yourself to do differently, if at all you would like to do something differently?
I think for me, I would tell myself to pause and take it all in, because it goes by, so quickly. I probably would have gone on an additional international trip just because of, the fun I had on the one I did attend. But I would probably somehow, as crazy as this sounds, I would find a way to get involved in more groups and just expose myself to more individuals. I was just so siloed because I had my blinders on and I was trying to complete my program in a specific time frame. But it really goes by quickly. I mean, you start your first semester and you're like, oh, this is going to take forever. And, you blink 2 times and you're sitting, at graduation, right? You're at Yankee Stadium and you're like, gosh, I'm finished already. So for me, I would just, pause, take it all in and just, enjoy the time and try to just expose myself to all the wonderful things that NYU has to offer.
I can definitely relate with you blink and you're I hear about sitting at graduation. Me in my third semester, I can relate with that. And I feel that students now who are taking their classes from remote almost feel that doubly, if not more, um, considering they are at home and time's passing by really, really fast, even though we find ourselves in a very different new normal. And I guess with that, Aditya, I'm going to come back to you. And I know Emily and Alex kind of shared their perspective on what students could be doing, whether they're remote or whether they're taking their classes virtually. What do you think, what advice would you give students who are actually starting school completely from remote? I mean, there are a lot of students who joined us this fall who are not even in New York. They don't get the New York experience or the melting pot experience that you spoke of earlier. What advice would you have for them? How could they be more open and still take advantage of everything that SPS has to offer?
That's a great question, because these are extenuating circumstances, and nobody knew we'll be in an era such as this. So I would rather say have one-on-ones. I think Amelia touched on this. Have as much face-to-face virtual interactions as you can with key people like your professors, for example, your academic advisors, for example, and join groups. So all these groups I see on the NYU Wireless networks, they have meditation exercises or different meetups happening all across. So I recently had a meetup in London, for example. So I could attend that. It's a good mixing or a melting pot there. No matter what region you are in, if you're in Asia, have a meetup in India, China, on these virtual hubs. And I like to say, the NYU Wireless Network could not have been launched at a more pivotal time. I would rather say. I think the timing is absolutely perfect, and it was very well called for. It was very important because it has multiple features. I've been around there for about 4 to 5 months now. So you can set up a meeting invite with anybody who you want to meet with within the platform itself. So you're not like, hey, can I have your email number? Can you give me can I have a WhatsApp call? Nothing of that sort. You can set up a meeting call. It'll generate an invite for you. You can have a virtual kind of like a Zoom call set up there. There are multiple discussions happening in that thing on leadership, on how do you tackle office or meetings virtually, what are some best practices. These are very current and very relevant stuff. And everybody, right, from students, current students to alumni, everybody is kind of participating in it. I think Sonal and Daniel do a fantastic job of moderating that as well. They post very good questions at times too, which really require some insight. I mean, it's not like cut and dry, and you have varied perspectives flying in for you. I was just answering a question on what tools work best for virtual conferencing. Blue Jeans is there, Zoom is there, Google Meetups is there. Everything has its own pluses and minuses. For example, leverage that. The Violet network is a very good start, as I've been echoing all throughout. Secondly, reach out to alumni. Absolutely. I mean, you may feel hesitant, but dropping a note hurts nobody ever. You might just strike a very good conversation, as Alex mentioned here. So, and you have your local chapters and local groups that you are a part of in your area. If you do not know, so find that out. You can do an easy search. I think it's you can search it out. If you do not have one, now is a good time, as Amelia pointed, to start one too. There are always alumni looking to join other groups. I'm in New York City right now, but I've joined a London group, for example, because I want to meet new people. And apparently I met one of my classmates who's right now based out of London. We lost touch, and now we've kind of rekindled that association. So, I mean, there are a lot of people who are in the same boat as you are in starting off school, and that is a very strong commonality that you have straight off the bat, because you are living in different regions of the world now, as opposed to it took me a term or two to kind of acclimatize myself, make friends. You have a lot of things thrown at you when you are in person. So now is a good prep time to have that base, because then when you are back in school, then you already have something to spring out of, you see. So I think it has its pluses and minuses. It depends on how you look at it. But I think you can really leverage a lot of groundwork even virtually, because people understand what circumstances you are in, and we are all in the same boat as well. So they'll be more responsive to have one-on-ones for that matter. And the second most important thing I would say is put your best foot forward. I mean, you may not have all the answers yet. You're always trying to explore the answers. So it's okay to drop in a note. I need to know something more about this industry. What does your work culture look like? What does your day-to-day activities look like? What are you passionate about? And I think it's very important to have that grounding on what's happening in school. I think a lot of other areas like OGS and Wasserman, they're holding their own meetups. I think the whole business model has become inverted. We are all in different areas trying to combat COVID. And a lot of, like, I know for Morgan Stanley, we have a lot of virtual webinars, for example, for incoming students, for people who are interested. So it has opened a whole new realm, and it's not bound by geography. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to be in person for these events. You can dial in from anywhere you want, provided you have interest. So look it out there, not just for NYU. Anything that interests you also. There are a lot of virtual events. Now is the time to tap into. I was always interested about archery, knowing what it is. I just joined a virtual meetup as an app. I joined a meetup group, and through Zoom, they tell you how competitive archery is scored, what are the rules of the game, things of that sort. Not that I'm an archer, but something I was interested about. So you'll find everything now. Now is the time to see what you're really interested in and passionate about, and then act on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Aditya. Amelia, one of the questions that came in the chat, and I'm going to combine it with one of the things I wanted to ask you, is as a woman leader, is there specific advice that you would like to share with our students on what helped you in establishing such a strong presence for yourself, not just at school, today in the corporate setting, and maybe even tap in a little bit about if whether or not your experience at The Hague, kind of learning or having those international experiences kind of helped you. I'll pass it on to you to kind of address that.
Sure. So yeah, I love to talk about this. I could probably talk forever, so I'll try and keep it really short since we have 8 minutes left. But first and foremost, this one's kind of for everyone, but find like a company or a leader who espouses a culture that you find to be supportive of you. That took me a long time. I would say I didn't have that until this current company, but now I have, yes, I love my company. Also, there's a leader who I really kind of trust to establish a culture that supports like diversity, inclusion, things like that. And so I feel comfortable and I really have no need to leave. I know a lot of people will say, oh, you need to like stick with a company for X number of years. I don't think that's the case. I think you need to find one that works for you and then you stick with it. And then there's a female mentor I had who offered me a piece of advice that I just love to share with other people. Before I came to my current job, she told me to find 2 mentors. And I was like, 2? Why do you need 2? And she even went on to more specificity. She was like, find 1 male, 1 female. Find one who is at your level or below you and one who's a higher up. And there are reasons for that. Not necessarily 1 male, 1 female, but just diverse groups because they offer different perspectives. And you might have your own perspective, but you can go to them and say, well, like, how do you feel about this? And it shows you what others in your company might think. Having, one at your level and 1 higher also gives you someone who you can ask your stupid and awkward questions to, at the lower level, but then also someone higher up who may bring you with them as they start to move up the chain as well. And then having 2 allows you the flexibility in case someone leaves. And a lot of people think that these have to be formal mentorships. I actually don't find for me that those work best. I don't know that I've ever told anyone that they're a mentor to me, maybe later on. But really they are, informal, just someone who I have regular conversations with and ask advice for. So that's what I would say is have 2 wherever you go. And then another thing, and this isn't just for women, but also, minority groups or anyone who just feels like maybe they're a quieter person, is to establish like a strong presence in a room. That took me years, but what I mean by this is it doesn't mean you have to talk the most or have the best ideas. In fact, I would say that's the opposite and actually makes you kind of like reflects poorly upon you. But there are small things that you can do that kind of establish you as a leader. And it really depends on company culture. But for me, I kind of walk into a room, and if there's no other women, I'll be like, just want to point out that I'm the only woman here today. Maybe bring a female with you next time. Or, the same goes for, if there are no Black folks in the room, that's a problem too. And you can call it out. Another thing, being in a male-dominated field, I no longer, maybe we call it, pulling a Kamala Harris these days, I don't know, but I no longer let myself be interrupted. I will just say, I wasn't finished, with my thought, and I'll plow ahead. And that over time has, it was scary in the beginning. I think I turned bright red and probably, sweated for the next 15 minutes, but ultimately that's established more respect than anything else. And then most importantly, I would say, and this is for everyone, not just, women, but is to make room for others to speak. That can be one of the most powerful things you can do, and makes you look really good too. I mean, if you're just like, yeah, I don't think she was finished with her thought, something like that. So that kind of has helped, I think, establish my presence in the room and can help others as well. And then in terms of The Hague, so I guess my experience there, we went to multiple places, Bosnia, Serbia, and The Hague. And in The Hague, we went to the International Criminal Court specifically. And that, I would say, kind of gave me a couple of different perspectives. So it's the first time where I was able to learn about legal systems like outside of the United States, which I just kind of assumed, I guess, that they in some ways reflected the US system, but I hadn't really studied them before. So that was the most impactful for me. And it also just, it gave me like cultural perspectives that I hadn't gained before. So absolutely, that helps me now in the room, just being aware of, what other perspectives individuals might have, kind of being in tune with that, making sure that I'm, phrasing things in a way that wouldn't necessarily offend someone who's, in the case of The Hague, whose legal system would be different, but we can actually have a conversation about it. So.
Thank you, Amelia, for sharing. Great advice. We got a couple comments in the chat about while you were speaking. I know we have only about 3 minutes left. Aditya, I just had one last question for you. If you could briefly answer, maybe name or talk about that one choice that you made at SPS that really laid the foundation to get you to where you are. If you could very briefly state that, and then we can wrap up today's conversation.
Absolutely. I think being curious, as I've always said, that's one choice I personally made, a cautious effort to kind of keep on learning and not let the learning stop just at SPS, and keeping in touch with my peers, my professors. One of the most important things that I think I could take away from and have a soundboard to get any advice or any, because these all are my well-wishers, and understanding that, making that community, as Alex said, having that extended family was something that I really did, and I really cherish to this day, that I really took cognizance of at that early on and acted on it. And it takes work to develop a relationship, but once you get that going, I think it's a very good soundboard, and it really helps you kind of assimilate multiple thoughts and see where you're going wrong as well, to get that critical feedback, to put your best foot forward in a room and come out as a better leader, I guess. So that's something that I've really taken off from my schooling there.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists today, Aditya, Amelia, Alex. Thank you for taking your time, talking about your experiences. And I'm sure that everybody who is currently watching and will watch this video later on would find it very, very valuable. We're honored that you took out time to spend your time with us today. I do want to take a quick minute to just kind of quickly mention that there are 2 more alumni conversations that are happening later on today. One is with the Veterans Association, and then the other one with Rainbow Alliance. So for anyone who's interested, please come to those. And if you found today's session, helpful, useful, there are about more than 250 plus such conversations that are recorded and available on the SPS Violet Network. So I will encourage you to go and check that out. And once again, thank you so much to our wonderful panelists here and to people behind the scenes who've made this possible. Sonal, Danielle, Susan, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.